I'll invite each one of you to stand for a moment of silent prayer. My tongue will catch up with me in a moment. A warm Sabbath welcome to each one of you. Let's begin with hymn 25. Hymn 25. Invite as many as can to kneel for prayer, and Sam Lozovic, would you lead us in prayer, please? Again, Wednesday evening, regular Sabbath services. Next Sabbath, at the end of service, we will have the offering of the offering full as we generally do on this Sabbath in the month. Let's take a moment now to give back to God in gratitude for Him in the tithes and offerings. Reading from Hebrews chapter 11, verse 13. Hebrews 11:13. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Please speak to us, Jared, about ambassadors.
What are ambassadors in the world today? Just in the normal world, not in a spiritual sense at all. What do they do? Well, there's a few different, you could say, definitions of what an ambassador is. One would be an accredited diplomat sent by a country as its official to a foreign country. So that would be one. And then another, a person who acts as a representative or promoter of a specific activity. And we know that there's many things, many ambassadors going to each country from different countries. Now, where do these ambassadors work? Or what is it called? It's called an embassy, the building. And what significance does this have? What significance does this hold? Let's keep this in mind for a few minutes, and I will come back to that point. Now, back to that point about ambassadors. We know what they are in the world around us. However, do we have any examples of ambassadors in the Bible? We could say ambassadors. Do we have any of these examples in the Bible? Well, there's quite a few, but I'm going to bring up about a couple. Well, we have one in the Old Testament of the little maid. Excuse me. We have one in the Old Testament, and this is the little maid. She wasn't per se a diplomat of a foreign country going to represent her country, Israel, in the foreign land. She was actually taken captive by the Assyrians. And why am I bringing her up? She's someone who, back in those days, was just a slave for the Assyrians. Now, did she have any influence? How was she an actual ambassador? Well, we know the story. She had a great influence to the captain of the Assyrians. And when he was sick, she brought up that would to God that he could go and visit the prophet in her land. So this is just one of the examples, and then we also have another example of a per se ambassador, and these are four males who were taken captive as well. We know this story very well. Daniel and his 3 friends. They were ambassadors to a foreign land, but they weren't all 5 of these that I brought up. They weren't ambassadors like I brought up in the definition of accredited diplomats sent to a country representing a foreign country. They weren't that per se. Now, what does it mean to be an ambassador for us? And what must we remember? John 18:36. John 18 and verse 36. It says, Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence." And another verse that goes along this, Hebrews 11 verse 16. Hebrews 11:16, and it says, "But now they desire a better country, that is unheavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city." And I'm going to read the key text that Brother Tobias read one more time. It says, "These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth." So, we are in this earth. We are living in this earth. Now, from these verses, we see that there were people who were claiming that they were not from this earth. Does that mean that we also claim that we are not from this earth? Is it safe then to say that we are representatives or ambassadors of some other kingdom, just living on this earth? Now, before I would like to dive into ambassadors and us as ambassadors, I would like to go back to the subject or the quick thing I brought up about an embassy and how ambassadors work in an embassy. What example in the Old Testament first do we have of something similar to an embassy? Well, in Numbers, I'm not going to read the verses, but Numbers 35, it talks about sanctuary cities and how they were a safe haven for some people to go to that when they had done something wrong. They were somewhere where a person could go and they would be safe. Now, an embassy can also be like that. Ambassadors work in that, but embassy can also be a stronghold or a safe haven where another country's police cannot go there per se. Now, this is the Old Testament. What do we have like an embassy now, or a fortress, or a city of refuge? I'm going to read now from Acts of the Apostle, page 11, paragraph 2. And it says, "The church is God's fortress, his refuge, his city of refuge, which he holds in a revolted world. Any betrayal of the church is treachery to him who has bought mankind with the blood of his only begotten Son. From the beginning, faithful souls have constituted the church on earth. In every age the Lord has had his watchmen, who have borne a faithful testimony to the generation in which they lived. These sentinels gave the message of warning, and when they were called to lay off their armor, others took up the work." So here we see Ellen White brings out that the church is like a fortress. It's a fortress similar to an embassy or similar to the cities of refuge. Now, this also from Ellen White, another from the Pacific Union Recorder, she says, "Godliness is becoming more and more rare unless the divine leaven of renovation works in the church. Little will be done to convert souls who will not only be consumers but producers. The church is now a vast hospital filled with the spiritually sick." The church is not for holy people. It's not for people who are holy of themselves. Just like Christ came into the world, not for people who thought they were holy, like the Pharisees. So now back to the subject of ambassadors. If we are ambassadors, or if we are representing someone on this earth, who are we ambassadors for? Oh, God did are his workmanship. We are his representatives in the world, and he expects we shall reveal the true value of man, purity of life, and by the earnest efforts put forth to recover the pearl of great price. So here we can see from 2 Corinthians and from Review and Herald by Ellen White, we can see that we are his representative. Who is he? Who is his representative? Who is he? He is Christ. It says we are ambassadors for Christ. And who constitutes these ambassadors? Ellen White says in Christian Service, "Seventh-day Adventists have been chosen by God as a peculiar people, separate from the world by the great cleaver of truth. He has cut them out from the quarry of the world and brought them into connection with himself. He has made them his representatives, and has called them to be ambassadors for him in the last work of salvation." Now, did he have to choose us? Did God have to choose us for this great work? The Review and Herald also says God might have made angels the ambassadors for his truth. He might have proclaimed the law from Sinai with his own voice, but he has chosen to take man into his counsel and connect him with himself.